Hello, my name's Anthony Whitting, and today we'll be exploring how to read the key texts of religion, often referred to as scripture. A common response to this might be, "Whoa, hold up there, word nerd, I can read." But bear with me, because there's more than one way to engage with these texts. Not only that, the approach we take can profoundly shape our interpretation. You see, scriptures are not merely books of instructional history, they are layered works of symbolism, psychology, and deeper truths. They speak on many levels at once, sometimes literal, sometimes metaphorical, and often deeply personal. In this episode, we'll explore how to uncover these layers of meaning as we strive to look a little deeper. Let's start with how we might approach reading scripture. We're often taught how to read novels, plays, or academic works, but rarely do we reflect on how to read religious writings. Yet this is significant as our approach informs our understanding. Take, for example, the phrase, "help yourself before helping others." Its meaning can vary greatly depending on the context in which it is encountered. In a safety manual, it might be a literal instruction for emergencies, such as ensuring your own safety before assisting someone else. At a political rally, it could suggest a broader framework for societal values or government policy. In a romance novel, it might reflect a character's personal growth or emotional journey. The same phrase, when framed differently, takes on an entirely new meaning. Scripture works in a similar way, where the meaning we ascribe to it depends upon the frame through which we read it. So how should we approach scripture? Well, one perspective is to view the stories found in scripture as mythology. That is, stories that societies use to explain themselves and the world around them. This requires recognizing the symbolic significance of these texts, instead of simply dismissing these stories as mere fiction. For instance, consider the well-known myth of Icarus from Greek mythology. Icarus, equipped with wings made of feathers and wax, is warned not to fly too close to the sun. Ignoring this advice, he ascends to a great height, causing his wings to melt and falling to his death. We can see this story as a cautionary tale about excessive pride. From it, we derive the expression to fly too close to the sun, which serves as a metaphor for moments when we act impulsively or overestimate our abilities. And if we're honest, all of us have flown too close to the sun at some point in our lives. We may have taken risks that seemed exhilarating in the moment, but had unintended consequences. As such, this ancient story resonates with us today because there's a part of Icarus in all of us. The mythologist Joseph Campbell captured this well when he wrote,
"Every myth is psychologically symbolic. They are to be read, therefore, not literally, but as metaphors."
Similarly, the psychologist Sigmund Freud recognized mythology's value in understanding human nature, observing that,
"I believe that a large part of the mythological view of the world, which extends a long way into most modern religions, is nothing but psychology projected into the external world. One could venture to explain in this way the myths of Pardes and the fall of man, of God, of good and evil, of immortality, and so on, and to transform metaphysics into metapsychology."
Put simply, myths like these endure because they speak to universal aspects of the human condition. In this way, mythology becomes a mirror, allowing us to see aspects of ourselves reflected back to us. However, our understanding of ourselves in life is never fixed. It is therefore unsurprising that an account such as Mythology, which seeks to capture the richness of human experience, is itself multifaceted, capable of operating on several levels at once. As the classicist Geoffrey Kirk observed,
like any tale, a myth may have different emphases or levels of meaning. The consequence is that analysis of a myth should not stop when one particular theoretical explanation has been applied and found productive. Other kinds of explanations may also be valid.
Therefore, part of the enduring power of myth lies in its ability to reveal new insights as we grow and develop. How we interpret these stories is inseparable from how we see ourselves in life. As our inner world shifts, new layers of meaning become available to us. Scripture and mythology are not the only places where symbols and metaphors help illuminate our inner lives. For centuries, authors and artists have used symbols and images to convey what they would be persecuted for saying explicitly, echoing the process that Freud held unfolded in dreams. According to Freud, contents that would be deemed too threatening by our conscious minds are distorted, undergoing a process that he referred to as the dream work. This process transforms the original threatening material into a less threatening symbolic form. For example, a person may deny that they hold any fear about their own mortality in their everyday life. However, this fear may make itself apparent in the person's dreams, represented by a dangerous dog. In this way, the person is presented with something that they feel is both frightening and beyond their control, mirroring the emotional reality they hold towards death. However, the fear is presented in a way that is more palatable than confronting the fear openly. This means that even if the deeper meaning remains obscured, our dreams may nevertheless bring our attention to the parts of ourselves that we may not otherwise be able to see. In this way, symbolism makes difficult material approachable by allowing us to interact with the ideas that we would normally be incapable of doing so directly. Similarly, seeing Icarus's pride is less confronting than an honest reckoning with how our own pride has hurt ourselves and others. It is one thing to acknowledge the idea that pride plays a role in our lives, but something entirely different to feel the truth of its presence. Symbols and metaphors serve precisely this function. Through stories, we are invited to recognize ourselves at a distance by projecting our inner world externally. Consequently, they can engage us at a depth that logic, reason, and analysis simply cannot. This allows religious texts to have a power that science neglects when it relies on a purely literal description and explanation of the world. Science excels at explaining how the world operates, but stories speak to how the world is lived, felt, and experienced. To illustrate the contrast more clearly, imagine a purely scientific analysis of the myth of Icarus. Such a report might conclude that preliminary data indicates that wax and feather wings degrade rapidly at high altitude due to elevated ambient temperatures. Technically accurate, yet hardly what one would call moving. As such, religion and mythology speak to a deeper dimension, one that science is unable to capture. It is therefore unsurprising to learn that religious traditions have also taken a similarly layered approach. The author of the Jewish mystical text, the Zohar, Rabbi Moses de Leon, articulated a tradition for reading scripture known by the acronym Pardes, or orchard. This approach divides scripture into 4 layers of meaning. The first layer, Peshat, means surface or direct, and refers to the literal meaning of the text. While being the most easily accessible, it is also the most limited, as it deals purely in an informative description of events. However, digging deeper, we start to examine what the text is alluding to. This layer is called remez, meaning allusion. From this perspective, just like myth, the text can be read allegorically, as it seeks to impart an element of truth which applies to us as human beings. As with the story of Icarus, we can see an aspect of ourselves in such accounts when we choose to read scripture in such a way. The third layer, darash, points towards a deeper quest for truth and understanding. Returning to the example of Icarus, a person might begin to seriously reflect on the role that pride plays in their own life. They may come to recognize how their pride shapes their behavior, what underlying needs or insecurities it responds to, and how it has contributed to the harm caused to themselves and to others. By seeing themselves reflected in the story, and by gaining the necessary insight to respond differently, the individual is no longer the same person they were before. In this way, such truths are not simply ideas. They become catalysts for transformation. Crucially, this process goes beyond mere intellectual comprehension. It requires an embodied awareness of how these ideas are lived out in one's own experience. Freud himself drew a distinction between knowing something intellectually and possessing a deeper form of emotional knowing, something which arises through experience rather than abstraction alone. Darash, then, is not about interpretation for its own sake. It is about insight that changes a person. The text becomes a mirror, and through that encounter, a person may come to see themselves more clearly and begin to change. The last layer is named sod, meaning secret or mystery. This layer lies beyond information and psychology, stepping into the realm of mysticism. As such, sod points to truths that may not be generally apprehensible to human beings, and only comes from an experiential knowing, not intellectual understanding. Joseph Campbell also acknowledged that such understanding rested beyond words, stating,
It has been well said that mythology is the penultimate truth. Penultimate because the ultimate cannot be put into words. It is beyond words. Mythology pitches the mind to what can be known but not told.
Sod, then, points to what lies beyond thoughts and language, the realm of direct knowing. This means that religious texts can reach a deeper truth than science is able to capture, because in a universe that is fundamentally mysterious, it leaves room for an element that resides beyond words. The enduring appeal of Scripture may lie in its role as a stepping stone towards the mysteries of life that continually elude our grasp. Scripture may, in fact, be a profound response to an extraordinarily difficult problem. Imagine trying to convey the experience of listening to a piece of music to someone who has never been able to hear, or describing a painting to a person who has always been blind. No matter how carefully one chooses their words, speaking of the softness of light captured by the canvas or the warmth of the colors, such descriptions can only ever be distorted approximations of the experience itself. The fundamental difficulty is that the experience cannot be fully captured by ideas or language alone. What is known through one mode of perception cannot be completely translated into another. This limitation helps illuminate the predicament faced by the founders and prophets of the world's religions. If they possessed an awareness of a deeper truth that others could not yet apprehend, they would have faced an extraordinary challenge, namely, how to communicate an experience to those who lack the ability to perceive it. Terms such as revelation, enlightenment, or awakening do not point merely to the acquisition of new information, but to a fundamental shift in perception itself. One of the most accessible responses to this challenge is to express the divine in human terms. In doing so, God is depicted as speaking, acting, and participating in the affairs of the world we inhabit. Yet, as the theologian Karen Armstrong observes, the reality that we call God exceeds all human expression. Any attempt to attribute human qualities to the divine therefore risks distortion and with it, misunderstanding about the very nature of God itself. Yet to speak of the divine in purely abstract or philosophical terms risks rendering religion distant and unrelatable, lacking any connection with the lives that human beings find themselves living. Such language may gesture towards transcendence intellectually, but it often fails to engage us experientially. Without a way to bridge the transcendent and the lived, religion risks becoming little more than philosophy, offering ideas, but no path towards transformation. Religion responds to this challenge by layering meaning within its scriptures. This allows such texts to speak on multiple levels at once, meeting people where they are while still inviting them towards a deeper understanding. Scripture thus functions not merely as a collection of doctrines, but as a living medium through which meaning unfolds over time. It is not simply text, but a means by which the ineffable can touch the human heart. As human beings, none of us possess absolute answers. As the theologian Houston Smith once observed, we are born in mystery, live in mystery, and die in mystery. Perhaps then, Scripture does not invite us to certainty, but to an ongoing exploration of our relationship with ourselves, with one another, and with life itself. It reminds us that truth is not always something to be solved or conclusively understood. Instead, truth may be something that we encounter gradually, through reflection, experience, and the way we live. It may be less a destination than a journey unfolding over time. Thank you, and I look forward to exploring life with you again soon.